was 5 years old when the sky took you away.
We're in the Scott Valley, Northern California. We're heading to Fort Jones Community Center.
They said your plane went down past the West Texas clay, but every answer sounded like a truth they wouldn't say.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and it is my honor to introduce Mark Paine Fisher today. Mark is a father of 5, a grandfather of 7, a storyteller, an entrepreneur, and a man who has spent much of his life helping people and organizations grow. But today he is here first as a grandson. Mark's roots run deep in Scott Valley. He is the grandson of Lauran Paine, the beloved
Snarky.
Western, I'm glad you said it, beloved Western author whose life and writing were closely tied to Fort Jones, Kidder Creek, and this remarkable valley. Lauran's work have reached readers around the world and helped inspire the film Open Range. The Paine Protocol is a Cold War thriller based on a true story, but today is more than a book event. It is a family story, and a story born from love, loss, memory, mystery, and the courage to keep asking questions. It reaches the back of Mark's childhood, honors his father that he lost, Captain Robert Treat Paine, and gives voice to a family story that has been carried on for nearly 60 years. What makes today especially meaningful is that Mark gets to share his story here in the community that helped shape his family, his grandfather's writing, and so many of memories behind the book. Please welcome author, father, grandson, and friend, Mark Paine Fisher.
Last year, this is going to be hard. I had no idea. Last year, I sadly ended a 37-year marriage. And it was the hardest thing we did. And we spent our whole lives raising 5 kids and enjoying 7 grandkids. And it just came to the point where I just was not showing up in really healthy ways. And I started to recognize that. And so I started getting help. And I found a group of men who helped me, instead of blaming my wife and blaming my circumstances for why I am or how I am, they invited me to look in the mirror. Over the course of about 3 hours on one day, my coach and therapist took me all the way back to 1966. And he said, "Mark, I think you show up today because there is a huge hole in your life that when your dad was killed, you spent your whole life, it was like a long shadow over your life, looking for approval and acceptance. It was like a bucket and it had holes in it because your dad had gone and no one could fill it. And you keep thinking that others can fill it for you. You need to do the work of patching up the holes from the inside." And what I didn't realize is as soon as I started working on me and how this story of my father's death shaped who I show up today as, the Paine Protocol was born. There's a psychologist and professor who talks a lot about writing as being the way to reshape a story if you've been traumatized in your past. And so what I'm going to read a little bit today from the book is true, but it's not all real. And I'm going to let you try to figure out which is which. But one of the things I noticed as I started this book a year ago, August, I was in Pearl Harbor. Who's been to Pearl Harbor? Okay. There's a map on the ground, and I walked over the map of Okinawa. And I leaned down and I looked at, my friend actually saw me, and I took a picture. And I said to my friends, I need to go back to the room and start writing. And I've been keeping notes all my life about what if my dad actually was killed, not on accident, but on purpose. And so I began to develop that story, and I started sending pieces of it to my brother Robbie, who you've met, and my sister Rachel, and they were like, keep going, Mark, keep going. So I feel like I don't know if you have ever felt this way, but sometimes I don't know what I'm thinking until I write it down. I think the process of thinking helps us understand our story better. But here's the problem. My grandfather kind of put a curse on me. I mean, he did. He was snarky. He called me Cram, which is my name backwards. And I said one day, hey, Grandpa, how much do you make as a writer? I was probably 12 years old. He goes, none of your damn business, Cram. Sound familiar? None of your damn business. And then my grandmother, Esther, looked at him and kind of gave him the evil eye. He goes, all right, I made $5,000 for 2 words. And I said, how'd you do that? And he goes, somebody wanted to buy a title of my book for a movie, and I sold it for $5,000. That was not open range. So I started handing things I've written to my grandfather. Now, 12-year-old boy, lost his dad in Fort Jones. I'm handing him things. Say, Grandpa, will you read this? What was I really looking for? Acceptance. Approval. And you know what he did? He took that red pen. I literally thought he cut himself with a knife. He had so many notes over my writing, and he would hand it back to me, and he says, Cram, you want to be rich as a writer? I said, yes, sir. He says, give yourself $1,000 for every word you cut for clarity, because you have too many words. And then he said this, you'll never be a writer. And my heart was broke. I said, why? Because you're like your dad. You're a people person. And writing is a monk's trade. And I remember my grandfather sitting in his office at 3 a.m. with 3 fingers. I said to him, Grandpa, when are you going to learn to type? You use 3 fingers on a manual typewriter. You know what he said? When I retire. So he knocked out all these books. I remember the pipe smell. I remember the bear rug, the stove, and he just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. I still have that pipe. It's in the book. My brother has one too. So that's a little bit of how we got here today. About a month ago, I sent a note over to I guess it was Teresa, and then she passed it to Leslie. Leslie said, it's going to be a crazy June, but we'll do the best we can. And so you have provided a gift to me to just show up. So I'm going to read a few chapters. Has anyone read it yet? Okay, so it's on Amazon, an Audible, the book, I read it, so it's also an audiobook. And so all I have right now are 6 copies of the early manuscripts, which I'd be delighted to sign for you if you're interested in getting that. Do any of you do audiobooks? Okay. Let me ask one more question. How many of you knew my grandfather over some course of your life? How many of you knew my grandfather? Okay. How many of you knew my dad, Bob Paine? 2. Those folks were introduced to each other. They've been married for 60 years. You knew my dad.
I was in high school. Yeah.
You went to high school. Did you graduate in 57?
No, I was in high school with him, but I was a younger classmate. I remember him.
Okay. What do you remember about him?
I remember that he was well liked. And I was, being a freshman, I didn't pay a lot of attention to other people, but I know he was a popular upperclassman.
Yeah.
That's all I remember. Talked to him a couple of times, say hi.
When he passed.
You went to school with him back there.
Ronnie? Yeah. When my dad passed, somebody came to my grandpa and says, we want to do a memorial at the high school for your dad, or for Robert. You know what my grandfather said? Nobody's going to care about that in 5 years. Don't put that thing up. So today, a few people care, and that touches me. Military. How many have been in the military service or in the family member of military? Okay, great. So this story has resonated with the military community pretty deeply, and so I'm very honored, and I just want to say thank you for either serving or being in service while your family served. So I'm going to read a few excerpts, and then I want to take some questions, and we'll just kind of let this flow as we go. But I have 7 grandkids. I've written 3 kids' stories. I've written 16 songs now, 4 for my grandkids. There's a song now for this book. It's called What Did They Hide? And we're thinking movie track sound, so maybe we'll play that for you. I don't know. I don't know where we're going. A friend of mine, have you ever read The Shack? Paul Young's a friend of mine, and I said, how do you prepare for these things? He goes, you show up, you pay attention, you look in people's eyes, and then you'll know what to say. So that's what I'm going to do today. How's that? Fair enough?
Sounds good.
So this is the 7th version of the Paine Protocol. When I first wrote it, it was 8,000 words. And I sent it to some people, and they read it, and they were like, keep going. Do more. Character development. This story is a page turner. So I invited 25 people into the story to analyze, question, bring clarity. So it's gone from 8,000 words to 20. And much of the shape of it now is because of the people who cared about the story early on. Also a friend of mine, his name's Ron Hall. Has anyone read Same Kind of Different as Me? Yep. He said that this has all the elements of a major motion picture. So that's a picture of my dad when he went into the Air Force. And the epigraph, some lessons are not just taught, they're carried. It's dedicated to my mom and my adopted father, Ron and Stephanie Fisher. And I said to my mom, for you, Mom, whose courage carried us forward when everything else fell apart. I had actually given my mom the book, and I said, do you want to read this? I mean, after all, it's about your husband. She said, yeah. But it was before I published it. And I said, just let me know what you think. And a month went by. Then 2 months. Finally, 5 months after I gave it to her, I'm chomping at the bit. And she calls me, she said, Mark, I just finished your book. And I approve. And then she said something that took me off guard. She says, I've actually wondered the same questions your thriller explores. And that's the day I knew this story mattered. Prologue. I was about 5 years old, sifting sand through my fingers in the neighbor's backyard when the shadow fell across me. Come on, honey. Her voice was tight, tighter than it ever had been. The December air in West Texas bit at my cheeks as if she lifted me from the sandbox, and I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. She's my neighbor. My mom's not there. She picked me up, and I didn't know her that well. I mean, I'm only 5 years old. And we'd been stationed there for a few months. My dad had just come home from Okinawa. Everything, as far as I knew, was normal. Where are we going? I asked. The airport. Your mom and brother will meet you there. I looked up. Will Daddy be there? She didn't answer right away. Even at 5 years old, I could feel it, that pause. It carried more weight than anything she could have ever said, and we drove to the airport in silence. The small terminal came into view. Its glass doors were fogged from the warm air inside. My mom stood at the entrance, holding 3-year-old Robbie against her side. Her pregnant belly was just beginning to show. Rachel was due in a few months. And I ran to her. Mommy, where are we going? She says, we're going to go see Aunt Marianne in California. Her voice was steady, almost practiced, and I lowered mine. Will Daddy be there? For a moment, she said nothing, and then the words came, quiet, direct, final. Dad's plane crashed. He's not coming home. The world didn't stop. There was no dramatic shift. No sound of braking, just this quiet, irreversible change. And I really didn't understand all of that in the moment. But I understood enough that something had ended, someone had been taken, and something no one could explain. Years later, without knowing how to name it, a question took hold. It would stay with me for decades. Was it a simple engine failure, or was there another story? What follows is where those questions led me. It's built from fragments and memories, documents and conversations gathered over a lifetime. Some is known, some is inferred, some is sheer fiction. And some of it lives in the space between what we were told and what actually happened. Here's where my imagination took me. Part 1, The Envelope, Chapter 1. Pensacola, Florida, January 2025. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. No return address, no postmark, just a weathered manila folder slid halfway underneath the door of a ranch-style home in Pensacola. It was addressed in pencil to the descendants of Captain Robert T. Paine. Open alone. Rachel almost tossed it in the trash. She thought it was junk mail, probably, but something in the weight of the envelope stopped her. Inside, she found 24 yellowed pages, a brittle photograph of a young airman beside a Cessna, and a cassette tape marked Play in Order, Debriefing, Tokyo, 1966. By midnight, her brothers got the same package. Mark in Bel Air, Maryland, Rob in Wilmington, North Carolina, both in their homes with headphones on, hearts pounding. They hadn't talked much about their father in years, and now his voice filled the room. This is Captain Robert Paine, U.S. Air Force. If you're hearing this, I've either been silenced or the mission failed. I was stationed in Kadena Air Base, Okinawa. My orders were simple. Study defoliants for jungle warfare in Vietnam. But what I found changed everything. The tape hissed, crackled, then it resumed. They called it Agent Orange. But the real formula, the one no one talks about, was developed in a joint program between Monsanto, the Pentagon, and an untraceable unit buried inside Project Shad. We were told it would save lives. I have reason to believe it's killing our own. Rob sat frozen on the back porch, slowly blowing smoke rings from the pipe his father once owned. Mark paused the tape. The room went silent except for this steady thump of his heart. He hadn't really slept for almost 2 days. And for a moment, he didn't press play again. He just stared at the recorder. Decades since he had heard his father's voice like this. Not distant, not fading. It was clear. It was distinct. It was present. And then, without warning, something else surfaced. Not from the tape, but from a memory of a 5-year-old. His father's hands over his, shoelaces that finally held, a voice calm and unhurried. Just like that, son. Then the door. Then he was gone. It was the last thing he ever taught Mark. Back in the present. Mark reached for the folder again, and inside were redacted documents stamped top secret, eyes only. But whoever delivered them did their homework. Now, before I want to bring you into an inside part of this story. So one of the early readers, his name was Joe Hughes, he's an educator in Michigan, was reading it. He said, Mark, the revelation of where that envelope came from, it's not believable. He says, you really need to work on that. To just say it was a retired archivist who had been diagnosed with cancer is not enough. I said, thank you. I hate you. I was tired of rewriting this. My friend said, when are you ever going to be done with this project? I said, I don't know. But whoever delivered them, what was his name, by the way? Joe Hughes. Real guy. But whoever delivered them did their homework. They weren't just declassified, they were disowned. It's the kind of records that don't show up in a Freedom of Information Act request because they were never supposed to exist. One document, though, stood out. It wasn't stamped, it wasn't classified, it looked ordinary, and that was the problem. An accident report, typed, clinical, final, but something about it didn't sit right. He turned the page and it didn't belong. There was a second page clipped to it, Not part of the original report, different paper, different tone, like someone else had added it later and forgotten, and it raised questions the reports never asked. One memo dated December 28th, 1966, the day before my father was killed, read, Captain Paine has expressed concerns regarding civilian exposure data. He intends to present findings to congressional aides. Recommend containment. Schedule evaluation flight 1229, Cessna 172, unarmed. Signed, D. Ellsworth, NSC Liaison, White House Task Force on Vietnam Agricultural Warfare. And two names caught Mark's eye, Ellsworth and another one scribbled in pencil in the margin. Haig, as in Alexander Haig, future Secretary of State, and then a rising figure inside the Pentagon's inner circle. He flipped to the next page. There was a map of El Paso, Texas, Bob's final flight path traced in a dotted red line, and it didn't match the official crash report. That report claimed engine failure on ascent. According to the memo, the engine was tampered with. A restricted airspace corridor activated just minutes before his takeoff, and by the request of the CIA's Agricultural Intelligence Unit, Bob's plane never had a chance. Can you see where my head is going? Fast forward to 2025. A Freedom of Information Act request filed by a Japanese journalist investigating American chemical testing on Okinawa. It accidentally surfaced the Paine file, buried for decades under a mundane misfiling called Forrest Grant's, Asia. It should have been flagged and suppressed within 48 hours. Joseph Hughes made sure it hadn't. You know where I learned that? I was walking down the road in Fort Jones one day, and some man across the street yelled over and says, Lauran, have I written any books lately? And I said, Grandpa, what in the world is he talking about? He goes, oh, my publisher won't let me use my name for all these books, so I have to use pseudonyms. I said, what's a pseudonym? And he explained it. He says, that guy over there is the author of one of the books that I wrote. And I was like, that makes no sense to me. So I borrowed that. I foreshadowed that. Hughes processed the Paine file himself in 1967. He was 24. They told him it was routine reassignment, misfiling under Forrest Grant's, was standing cover for sensitive materials, so he signed off. He didn't ask questions. That was his job. For 58 years, he told himself he didn't know. But he knew enough. He was 81 now. The diagnosis came back in October, and he wasn't afraid of consequences anymore, only of running out of time. He didn't think that it was really courage. He thought it was debt. So he slipped his file, the tapes, the notes in a padded envelope, and the note read, he died trying to save lives. The truth was never friendly to power. Don't let them rewrite the ending. Mark leaned back in his chair, stunned. For nearly 60 years, his father's death was a footnote, a tragic accident. But now, in the quiet hum of his office, he held something far more dangerous. Proof. Of what exactly he didn't know. But the names, the tape, the memos, it was enough. Enough to reopen old secrets buried deep in military vaults. Enough to rattle families of men still alive. Enough to rewrite the Paine family legacy. The truth was out. Or at least part of it. Mark looked back at the file. If even half of this was true, his father hadn't died in an accident. They silenced him. Mark closed the folder slowly because the question wasn't just what happened, it was this. Who made sure no one found out? I think I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 2. It's called Paying Attention. Yes? Question?
What you are reading in this first chapter,
Yeah.
is this your fiction, or is these documents something?
Great question. So is it fiction? Let me tell you.
Yeah.
All of it is true.
Okay.
It's just not all real.
Okay.
I heard that the first time.
All of it's true.
Yeah,
The emotion, the loss, the storyline, it's all true. But what happens in between my brain and the records, that's a little bit of imagination.
Okay, and Grandpa, has Grandpa ever discussed this with you? What his feelings are?
He never did.
He never did.
Did he with you?
You
No,
never
and
mentioned
that,
it at all.
he
No.
never talked about it. We
Yeah.
asked Mom,
And we figured it was sensitive subject,
and
losing a son, so we never really tried to delve into it with Lauren.
Okay.
And
He
so,
probably knew, because he did a lot of research.
Yeah,
yeah, that's,
he did a
that's,
Vietnam
that's
book.
what I was saying.
He never talked about it with me. And here's the weird thing. When I would come out, my grandmother would call me. We lived in Virginia by then. My mom had remarried. And I would get a phone call. Marky! My grandma, Esther. I sold a cow and you're coming to Fort Jones. And she would sell a cow, buy a plane ticket, and I would come. What was hard for me is that she would spend a little bit of every day opening boxes of pictures. And she would say, I want to introduce you to your dad. And she would tell me stories. My grandfather,
That's kind of a man thing.
sadly
grief
it is.
They handle grief differently.
Yeah, and that's the thing about grief. It creeps up, and it either closes us down or it opens us up. And that's what's happened with this story for me. It's opened up my ability to grieve a loss. Somebody asked me recently, do you feel like you're healing from that grief? And I said, I think writing this story has been a part of the healing. But the way I know that I'm healing is that I have room for joy. That I'm not just sad, but I have room for joy. Okay, a little bit of chapter 2. It's called Paying Attention. Before he was a report, before he was a question, before he became a mystery, Robert Treat Paine was a man people trusted. Yes?
yes.
Fort Jones, California, summer, 1955. The barn smelled like hay and horses and something older than both. Matter of fact, we have a gentleman that lives in that house now with us. Bob Paine was 16. I think he was 16, mucking stalls before breakfast while his younger brother, Lauran, still slept. That's how it works in the Paine household. Lauran Sr. didn't assign chores. He modeled them. You either noticed what was needed being done and did it, or you didn't. And if you didn't, he noticed that too. Bob noticed. His mother, Esther, appeared in the barn doorway with a tin cup of coffee, steam rising in the morning cool. She had a quality of stillness that Bob carried in his bones. The ability to be fully present without filling the space with unnecessary words. She understood horses. She understood patience. She understood that some things couldn't be rushed and that the ones who really tried to usually paid for it. Hey, Bob, your father's leaving Thursday. He said he has another deadline. Bob nodded. Lauran Sr. wrote the way other men breathed, constantly, compulsively, with 3 fingers on a manual typewriter that rattled the walls of his office at 3 a.m. Nearly 1,000 books and still going. Western novels, mostly, under names no one connected to the quiet rancher in Fort Jones. That was another lesson Bob wouldn't understand until much later. Sometimes the most powerful thing a man does, nobody sees. He leave you anything to read? Esther asked. Yeah, red pen marks, Bob said. Same as always. Esther smiled. She handed him the coffee and walked back toward the house up the hill. Bob straightened up, looked around the stall, clean, complete. He drank his coffee and watched the sun come up over the beautiful Scott Valley. Pay attention. Follow through. He didn't know yet that those 2 things would one day cost him everything and save everyone else. Big Springs Air Force Base, Texas, October 1966. The kitchen smelled like coffee, toast, The house was still waking up. Steffi stood at the counter, one hand resting on her stomach, 7 months along. Rachel, she thought. If it's a girl, I'm going to name her Rachel. Across the room, Mark sat on the floor in his pajamas, wrestling with his shoelaces, his small face pinched with concentration, tongue pressed to the lower lip, laces going in every direction except the right ones. Bob watched from the doorway. He didn't announce himself, didn't offer help right away. He just watched his son struggle with the stubborn dignity of a 5-year-old not yet ready to ask for help. Then Mark looked up, caught his father's eye, and the dignity collapsed. "I can't do it," he said. Bob crossed the room and sat down beside him on the floor, big frame folding itself down without ceremony. He reached around and placed his hands over Mark's, large hands, steady hands, unhurried. "Here," he said, "take this first string and wrap it over this, step by step, no frustration, no performance of patience, just actual patience, which is a whole different thing entirely." After a few tries, the bow held. Mark looked down at it, then back at his father. Bob squeezed his shoulder once and stood. "Just like that, son." Steffi watched from the counter, coffee growing cold in her hands. Something about that way he sat down without hesitating, without sighing, without checking his watch, made her chest ache in her heart in a way she couldn't even name. He was always like that, fully present in the small moments. And if he understood, as if maybe he understood in some quiet part of himself, that the small moments were actually the large moments. The Paine Protocol. It's a Cold War thriller based on our true story. Some of it's real, all of it's true. What questions do you might have?
I want to go back and look.
Well, it's be available for you. And by the way, it's $20. I will sign it. It'll probably go down in value because of that. But if you do buy that book, I will be happy to just send you the audio book as well as a gift.
Why did you open your bag?
Yeah.
Well, I showed it from already. Well,
Is this a surprise? Is this what you were not telling me?
no, I just got,
No, yeah.
I've got 3
Oh,
of
the
these.
burnt.
Yeah, he used my name as a pseudonym.
He used your name as one of the pseudonyms?
Is that,
I wonder if it was you that screamed across the street.
and also he used my son-in-law, who was a highway patrolman. His name was Gordon Masson, and he used Gordon as a sheriff in one of his books.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Look at those.
Thank you very much. The tombstone. My brother asked him one time, "Did you need to write an autobiography?" And he goes, "I did. It's called The Maverick." Is that the name of it? The Maverick?
I think so. I
Or
think
was
I've
it
got, I
the
think I've got
Mustang.
Mustang,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Mustang. I haven't yet to read that one.
I have one. If you
Oh.
don't have it.
That would be
Only
amazing.
his wife complained to me one time that he put another title on his book called The Burnt Hills.
Yeah?
He has 4 titles called The Burnt Hills.
Oh, he does?
3 at that time.
Oh my
When
God.
you do 1,000+ books, you kind
He'd
of,
read so many, he couldn't remember what the title was supposed to be.
I asked him one time, "Grandpa, how do you come up with so many stories?" He goes, "Cram, there's only a few storylines in the universe. 3." He says,
told me 3.
What were they?
I can't remember.
Oh.
Says,
But he says,
I love you, I don't love you, I do love you, something like that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody else got the woman, the man got mad, he went after him, and that was the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I remember him typing, just as
3
you
fingers.
explained. Yep. And I often thought he could probably type faster than most kids can do their computers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this thing was crazy.
Yeah.
Well, he wrote like a man would go to a job. He'd get up a certain time in the morning, possibly longer hours when he was younger.
Yeah.
But he'd go down to his area where he wrote
Yep.
there. And he put his 8 hours or whatever in,
1
and
o'clock.
that was
He
it.
stopped at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, one.
He'd get up real early in the morning and
The rest
start.
of the time he played.
How long was he married to Mona?
20 years.
20 years? Okay, 20 years. And she was a librarian here, is that correct?
The Siskiyou
Wairika.
County
Wairika?
Museum.
Yeah.
Wairika.
Did you know that story? Yeah, yeah, so when my grandfather left
Yeah, that's how I think they met, was
At the
'cause
li-
at the library.
Yeah,
He was doing a
do
lecture or
research for
something.
him.
Okay,
I
yeah.
have a lot of those articles and pictures.
Do you? Oh,
You're welcome to them.
that would be amazing. I just remember my grandmother, I was in college, she calls me, she says, Marky, Grandpa's being weird. I said, what do you mean, Grandma? You know, I'm 19 or whatever. Well, he just came in and said, today's my moving day. I was like, that's crazy. And so I, for years, didn't know anything, didn't know Mona. And when I, probably 30 years ago, my brother and I decided to come and meet Mona and talk to Grandpa. And my grandfather was a different spirit, I think, a different vibe. That's probably not a great
They
word.
were happy.
They seemed to be happy.
Very much. They were like two little kids. I mean, they'd hold hands, and they were very, very into each other. But you say you recently went through a divorce.
Correct.
All right. And I'm his third. The one that's lasted the longest.
Okay.
Almost 40 years.
Here we go, Wes. Les.
But anyways, two very good people
Yeah.
can just kind of move apart. Their lives change. It doesn't mean either one of them are bad people.
Right.
It's just life, and life happens, you know.
It does.
We had dinner with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
And if you didn't smoke, when you left there, you started
Oh,
smoking.
you smell like smoke forever.
That's right.
you moved into that house.
It took 10 years for the smell of cigarettes to dissipate.
Oh, you're kidding me. Yeah, he was a chain smoker, pipe smoker. I brought
He
that
loved
stuff.
his pipe. He
Yeah.
loved his pipe.
And I don't even know if he actually smoked, if it was just sitting there or in his
He
hand.
held it.
Yeah.
It was really. You'll read about it.
Oh,
Yeah. It was rubbed. So like when my brother holds his, he can feel the rub of holding that pipe.
Well, after Lauran passed away, we went and saw him right before, and we're there for Mom and stuff. She would write every night to him. That's how she dealt with it.
Yeah, we
Yeah, that's the
unearthed those
therapy.
after Mom passed. We
On
found
yellow, legal
Oh, you
paper.
did?
Yep,
Did you read them?
yep. They're
That must have been hard.
soulmates.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
it was tough.
Hey, you could probably make a movie out of those.
he did a lot of
The
research.
letters.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the guy's name. He was, I think it was Reagan's Secretary of State, the Jewish fellow.
Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger.
He corresponded with Kissinger a lot. That's where he got some of his stuff for his war books and stuff.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I
He
can
did-
tell
he
you I'm
did-
working on a sequel, and some of this is going to show up in it. I guarantee you.
He didn't elaborate, but you could tell he was in contact with him,
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is going to be really interesting for the sequel. But I've got this image that a government worker came to the house, the ranch, and tried to talk my grandfather into using his books as code to get military secrets out, and he refused. And as a result, his son was killed. I don't know if that lands. That may be too much.
And that's,
Too much.
The first line would be better.
Yeah, okay, all right. All right. Again, it's right here. It's nowhere else.
Agent Orange was terrible.
Yeah. You remember I told you I could get $1,000 for every word I cut? My publisher coach, he was reading the draft. He goes, Mark, you use one word way too many times in your book. And I said, tell me what it is. And he told me. And then I went into the document. I said, search for all those words. There were 308 words I had to cut. So I made $308,000 according to my grandfather. It's play money, I guarantee you.
Well, I know one thing he stressed one time we were up at their house for dinner. Don't ever use the word
A lot.
A lot.
Yes.
Oh, you took the words out of my mouth. Well, I taught first grade for 34 years. No one in my class
Said a
wrote
lot.
a lot. And I always gave that story.
He says, you're lazy, using the word a lot.
Yeah.
I said, Grandpa, what would you use? He goes, you figure it out.
Well, so he was very consistent, so, you know.
I was his favorite, by the way.
What's that?
I
You were
was
the
his
favorite? Oh, wow. I would love to see
Nah.
family pictures of that. Well, you knew Bob as a peer in school. Do you mind telling that story that you told coming in for the rest of the, or does everybody know that story?
Probably not.
Okay, would you mind sharing that story?
Bob and I sat next to each other in algebra class at Wairika High School, and we became friends. We were never dating friends, we were just friends. And he said, I'm going to be your big brother. And he said, I will protect you. And I thought, well, I don't need protecting, but that's really nice. Anyway, so we were friends. And the next year, when Ron and his family moved to Wairika, Bob and Ron just hit it off immediately and had been friends ever since. Well, anyway, Bob rushed up to me one time during break and said, Jude, I've met this guy, his name is Ron Washington. You've got a meeting because you would be a really good couple. And we've been married for 66 years. And I think you were at our wedding.
I was at your wedding?
No.
Oh, she was at the wedding.
At
I was
our
like, how did that happen?
No.
66 years, and you've got the yearbook with his picture. 2 yearbooks showed up today. That is amazing. Thank you. Can I tell you another story? My sister Rachel never got to meet her dad. And for most of her life, the struggle that she felt was that my dad left her. And as I was writing, I got to chapter 5, and I imagined that he wrote a letter to Rachel before he died. And I sent it to my sister in early draft, and she texts back tears coming down on that page. And sometimes, even when it's a fictional story, it can get to our heart and do something I did not dream of. So this is chapter 5, Dear Rachel. Now, obviously, he didn't know it was a girl because they didn't have sonograms back there. Like, you got to let some of that stuff go for accuracy. Although some of my early readers were like, nope, you got to, like, I have a sticky note in here. And somebody goes, did you look up what year sticky notes were built? And I said, no. So he looks it up and he goes, oh, it's 2 years before what you said, so that's inaccurate. Keep the sticky note. So Rachel Paine never knew her father. Born 6 months after the crash, she grew up in the long shadow of a hero-shaped mystery. Her mother, Steffi, rarely spoke of Bob except to say he was brave and kind and always looking for the truth, even when the truth was dangerous. Rachel moved across the country in her 30s and traded any weight of legacy for the white sandy beaches of Florida's west coast, which is actually where she lives. She made pottery, taught yoga, not true, grew tomatoes, and she found peace. Then her brother called, Rachel, I found something. The tone in his voice unlocked a door inside her she thought was bricked over for decades. 2 days later, a manila envelope arrived by registered mail. Inside was a smaller envelope, yellowed, unsealed, addressed in handwriting, and she didn't recognize. Although when I saw the Bob's handwriting in your book, I was like, that is my dad's handwriting. She turned it over in her hands, studied the loops of the letters, the slight leftward lean of someone who wrote in a hurry, under pressure, or both. She sat on her porch barefoot in the Florida sun, warming on her face. The Gulf wind moved through the palms. She lived here 12 years and never stopped feeling like she was still looking for something. And then she opened the envelope. Fort Bliss, Air Force Base, Texas, December 1966. And my dad was killed December 29th, 1966. My dearest Rachel, If you're reading this, it means I didn't come home, and that breaks my heart. You don't know me yet, but I've known you since the moment I heard you inside your mom. She cried. I knew you were going to be strong. She always said you kicked harder than your brothers. I just want you to know that I loved you before you were born. I dreamed of teaching you how to ride a bike, to watch you dance in the kitchen like your mom, hearing you say dad for the first time. But life, especially in uniform, can be unpredictable. There are things I've seen here in Asia, things I've been asked to do and not do that I don't agree with. I've chosen to speak up. Some may say this is foolish, but silence would be betrayal to our country, of my conscience, and of you. If anything happens to me, please don't believe I left you. I didn't. I was taken from you. I believe the truth is worth the risk. If someday you want to know what really happened, talk to Mark. He always paid attention. All my love, Dad. Sometimes story can do things inside us that bring healing from grief and sorrow that we could never imagine. And that's why I love story.
I think now that this is coming out, I think if your grandpa knew it, he'd be happy.
Yeah, I'd be proud.
Very proud.
Wow. Wow.
Because he didn't know either. He suspected, but he did not know.
That was a gift, thank you.
And then he probably just said you won't be a writer because that makes you work harder to be a writer. That was probably in.
You think that was his
Yep,
motive?
That's what I think. That's what I think.
Sneaky old man.
He was incredibly smart,
Yeah.
intelligent. Yep.
Yeah. Somebody had a hand up, yeah?
I have a question. What do you know about Lauran's father or grandfather?
Okay.
What's the history on that?
What do I know about my grandfather Lauran's father and his grandfather?
Maybe his father, too.
So Lauran's father, which would be my great-grandfather, and the great-great-grandfather. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when I started putting together this book, I did some research. And coupled with that research, I came to visit Mona and Lauran 30 years ago. I'm not good with dates. And I sat down on a table, a camera, and I said to Grandpa, hey, Robbie and I want to know about our family history. We want to know about the Paine name. Are we related to Robert Treat Paine, signer of the Declaration of Independence? Are we related to Thomas Paine, author of Common Sense? He goes, he didn't have common sense. And I remember to this day him sitting at the table. Mona was behind him at the counter. And my grandfather turned around and looked at Mona. And she nodded her approval. He said, Paine's not your name. My brother and I just were stunned. What do you mean Paine's not our name? He goes, I hated my father. When I was 18 years old, I went to the courthouse, changed my name to my maternal family, because he was big into Indian lore. He says, I took my, so Paine is a part of the history, but it's not your grandfather's name. I said, okay, I get that. What was your name? He goes, Doobie. And my brother and I look at each other and go, we're the Doobie Brothers. But we were shocked when we heard that. And what I learned is that not only did he hate his father, but his father hated his father. So there was this animosity of pain, P-A-I-N-E, that was connected to P-A-I-N-E. And so when I tell the story of my dad, every Memorial weekend, I put this out for my kids and my grandkids. And it's a picture of my dad, his rank, his hat, and some pictures of me as a little kid. And essentially, there's my oldest granddaughter holding that picture, and then a picture of my family. And I just say this. I said the doors would open, the kids would come in. Now the grandkids too. Some stood, some understood, some didn't yet, but they always saw it. This is your great-grandfather, Mark would say, not as history, but as an inheritance. You may remember in the epigraph that I make the statement that some lessons are not taught, they're carried. So what I have hoped for when I learned that the Pain was woven into his story, I wanted to be careful that I would be a father differently. And I remember when my mom remarried Ron Fisher, there's a chapter in here called Two Fathers. And we moved from Bay Area to Virginia, where he went to work for the Department of Transportation. And every year for about 2 or 3 years, so I was 8, 9, 10, I would write a Father's Day card and I'd say, "Dear Ron, Happy Father's Day, Mark." And then there was this one year when I was about 10, I had my pen in my hand and I looked down at that card and I wrote, "Dad." And he walked over to me and he says, "Just quiet, man. Thank you." And a couple weeks later, he came to me and he said, "I know it's really hard. All these kids at school know you as Mark Paine. You live with a Fisher. I would like to adopt you and give you my name. It'll just be easier." And I was torn. I'm Mark Wheeler Paine. So I called Fort Jones. I called Grandma. I said, "Grandma, what do I do?" And you remember the old phones that were this? And it was a party line, right? I heard somebody in the background. And they didn't hesitate. They said, take his name. It'll just be easier. But keep your dad's name as your middle name. So for my whole life, I've been Mark P. Fisher. But my grandfather said this. He said, when you're 18, go to the courthouse and you can change that name. I didn't know the connection. It's fascinating how blood, story, pain can travel. And until we find places of retelling the story to bring healing, it is, for me, it was absolutely overwhelming. So I have 5 kids. All of them are girls except for 4. And their names are Austin Paine Fisher, Reagan Paine Fisher, Jordan Robert Paine Fisher, and Brennan Paine Fisher. And I now have 2 grandsons, Elliot Paine Fisher and James Robert Paine Fisher. We can honor the past.
Yeah.
We don't have to repeat it. We can make a new future. And sometimes just telling stories helps us do that. Yes, ma'am.
Esther had a really hard time accepting that your stepfather wanted to adopt you. She totally understood, but it was really hard for her to lose the pain.
Wouldn't she be surprised today?
Yeah, she would be, yeah. And the other thing is, on the plane crash, Esther always felt it was intentional.
What?
She always did, because we rode every day. I would ride down from the ranch to her place. Connie Herman and her and I, we'd ride across the valley, we'd ride up on the hill. We rode forever. And even though I was young, she always felt that the plane wreck was intentional.
What kind of things did you say?
Well, just...
or why?
I don't know. You know how kids
She had a feeling.
Grown-ups, you just talk, you know. We'd ride down through the Glendinning Ranch, across the slough up. We rode all the way up to Billy Cross's one time, up Hungry Hollow. I mean, we rode all over and just, I was a kid, but we just talked. And I remember her, and she was really close to my grandparents and my dad. And, you know, it's just things you remember as a kid.
That is crazy. My mom the same. My sister the same. My sister dug up the Paine report from the Air Force. You know, when you tell a story like this and you drop names like I did, I had to have this lawyered up a little bit to protect me from people who might suggest that I'm pointing the finger at others that actually silenced my dad. I didn't think anything of it because it was just that this story did everything for me that I wanted it to. It helped me just to find healing. The fact that others are like seeing it. So I'm a little nervous. Like my filmmaker friend, Britt, he's like, you know, the government does stuff like this. And I'm like, well, probably, but I have no confirmation this is a true story. But to hear that, my grandmother wondered, oof. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Lauran's mom.
Wait, her name was, that's okay.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But he never liked his dad, I know that.
Yeah.
And he said that he was mean to his mom.
Mm.
And that she had her own cosmetic line or perfume line or something.
Du jour.
I don't know what it was.
Who knows?
Yeah. But he didn't tolerate any disrespect for women.
Interesting.
At all.
Yeah, he was a yes ma'am.
That's right.
Yeah. He'd look at me. He wouldn't even say things. I'd say, my grandma would make this cake. I can't remember. What's the kind of cake?
Angel food?
The whipped cream cake.
Whipped cream cake,
With
but
the chocolate chips on it.
that's it.
Down the side.
Yeah. That's it. And she would hand it to me, and I would take it. And my grandfather would look at me like this. I go, thank you, ma'am. So now my little grandson, Elliot, he's 4 years old. I was at his house 2 weeks ago, and he's sitting at the dinner table. And you know, the love of grandparents is easier than parenting. We all know that to be true. So I don't parent my grandkids. I just watch. And Elliot goes, thank you so much for a delicious dinner, Mom. May I be excused? And I looked at my son, and I was like, he goes, yeah, we're teaching him now. Respect. To say you all have been a blessing is an understatement. I did not know what to expect today. A lot of emotion has risen up, and you were the ones that stirred it, and your presence just is a gift.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. I would be happy to sign a book if you'd like to get the book.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes.
How often did you come to visit your grandpa?
Most summers from 10 to 16.
And like all summer,
Couple weeks.
With your brother and sister?
Nope, no, just me. Robbie and Rachel didn't come, and I don't know why. Maybe she didn't have enough cows to sell. My mom said that I was her favorite.
Well, firstborn, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I was her first grand.
Me too.
Yeah, but I will say this, I think I was 15, my mother had dragged me in Virginia. She said, I'm gonna take you to a Christian camp up in New York. I was like 15, something. I said, no, you're not. I'm not going to church every day for a freaking week. And you know what my mom said? She goes, well, I hear there's more girls than boys. She got me. So that next year, I came out to Fort Jones, and my grandma says, hey, Marky, I heard you got religion. I said, something like that. She goes, there's a new Christian camp that's opening right now. They're having an opening ceremony. It's called Kidder Creek. You want to go see it? And on Saturday, I get to be a guest of Kidder Creek on their 50th anniversary for the first camp that I went to as a kid.
Nice.
And the work you don't know I do is I help fill Christian camps around the country with my company called Inspiring Growth. It was planted at Kidder Creek. I've helped hundreds of thousands of kids go to camp. So it's like, what in the world? Pay attention. I call it divine magnet. Things are happening for reasons we do not understand. Okay, I've kept you long enough.
Still calling through the flame. What did they hide? What did they know? let my father fly and never let him go? What did they bury out there in the dust? What did they hide that was stronger than us?